discover the incredible way he transformed his life after his wife humiliated him on her birthday. Jake stood in the crowded living room, a half-empty glass of beer trembling in his hand. Laughter filled the space, cutting sharply through his thoughts. Sarah's birthday party had been her shining moment, yet beneath the surface, he felt exposed and small. "Here's to my incredible husband," she had said with a bright smile, then added, her tone playful but the words daggers, "who has always been a steady presence, even if he hasn't quite found the ambition to really chase his dreams." A silence swept over the room like a cold gust. Jake's chest tightened, his heart pounding with embarrassment. His friends shifted uncomfortably, sipping their drinks as if each word had cast a shadow over the celebration. It felt like everyone was staring, their eyes poking at his insecurities. He nodded, forcing a hollow smile, but inside, he churned with doubt. How had it come to this? The very foundation of his life, a life centered around providing for his family and supporting Sarah, was suddenly riddled with insecurity. As he watched her accept applause, basking in the accolades of her thriving career, a flicker of something deeper surfaced, a gnawing truth. He felt stagnant, drifting while Sarah flourished. But beneath the humiliation sparked something else, a desire for change, for reclamation, for purpose. Determined not to let this moment define him, the next morning Jake threw himself into something new. He enrolled in night classes after long days at the garage. Exhaustion swept over him like a heavy blanket, but so did the hope of building a future, the dream of owning an auto shop flickering back to life. Each late-night study session, each penny saved felt like small victories as he often fell asleep over his books, visions of engines and business plans dancing in his head. The camaraderie of his community wrapped around him like a warm hug. Neighbors offered encouragement. Friends lent support, cheering him on. "You got this, Jake," someone would shout at the diner while he was deep in thought over a cup of coffee. The fabric of small-town life was woven together by the shared struggles and triumphs, their collective belief igniting the fire within him. As the annual entrepreneur competition loomed on the calendar, excitement turned to anxiety. His old insecurities bubbling back to the surface. Rumors about Sarah's past whispered through town like the wind. Could their lives be built on hidden truths? Thoughts gnawed at him. Did he dare to unveil his dreams in front of everyone, when their foundation felt shaky? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The night of the competition dawned heavy with anticipation. As he stood before the crowd, adrenaline coursing through him, Jake felt a profound transformation ripple within his soul. This was bigger than self-improvement. It was about showing his family the power of perseverance, the beauty of resilience, and the strength of love. But just as he opened his mouth to share his story, a rustle swept through the audience, and he caught a glimpse of Sarah's nervous eyes. Heart pounding, he realized tonight wasn't just about chasing dreams. It could tear apart the very fabric of their lives. What secrets could emerge from the shadows? Would this be the moment they reclaimed their dreams or watched everything they had built crumble? Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everyone's expectations hang in the air. He opened his mouth, ready to share the spark that had ignited his journey, but the sight of Sarah gnawed at his nerves. She looked beautiful, stunning even, but the worry lines on her forehead told a different story. Would his revelation shatter her sense of security? Would he pull the rug out from under their marriage, exposing the cracks? The thoughts swirled in his mind, each one heavier than the last. He glanced at the crowd gathered before him, their eyes bright with anticipation, waiting for him to unveil his aspirations. Could he risk everything for a shot at a brighter future? Thank you all for being here tonight, Jake finally managed, his voice shaky but resolute. I've always felt like I was just coasting. But that changed this year. The murmurs in the audience grew quieter as he spoke. I've enrolled in night classes to learn the ins and outs of owning my own auto shop. There it was. The secret he had nurtured in the quiet hours of solitude. A spark of life returned to his eyes, and the disbelief in some of his friends' faces melted into pride. I want to show my family that it's never too late to chase your dreams, that staying stagnant isn't an option anymore. I want to be someone you can rely on, not just someone who fades into the background. He paused, taking a moment to steady his racing heart, taking in the unexpected support that surfaced in response to his words. A few friends nodded, their smiles encouraging, and a distant cheer erupted from someone in the back. For a fleeting heartbeat, he felt invincible, but then, a flicker of doubt clouded his elation. What if Sarah didn't share in this vision? What if all this was for nothing? The noise of the crowd faded, and his pulse quickened as he turned his gaze back to her. Her expression was unreadable. He knew there were things unsaid between them. Secrets tucked away, embarrassing truths that family dinners could not diminish. Jake couldn't help but think of the whispers he had heard about Sarah's past, stories of relationships that had ended in bitterness. What had she been through before him? Did she ever carry dreams of her own that she had let slip through her fingers like sand? Dreams are powerful, and sometimes they come with a price, he said, feeling the stir of vulnerability in the air. We all bear our burdens, but it's how we choose to face them that defines who we are. He took a step forward, letting the words resonate. Tonight is about breaking free of those burdens while moving forward together. Just as Jake thought he was reaching the finish line of his speech, an unexpected voice pierced through the crowd. Sarah stood up, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. Jake. His breath caught in his throat. There was fear in her eyes, but also what he hoped was determination. There's something I need to say, and it's time I confront the past. Panic bubbled in his chest like boiling water. What would she reveal? Would it shatter the fragile hope he had built? As he looked into her deep gaze, he realized the weight of this moment extended beyond him. It was about them, about the walls they needed to tear down to rebuild something stronger. The air grew heavy with unspoken words, and the audience held their breath. What truth was Sarah about to unveil? Would this be the moment they found clarity, or was it the beginning of the end? As the silence stretched, the room felt suffocating. Jake's heart raced louder than the murmurs of the crowd. He thought about all the conversations they had skipped over, the delicate topics they avoided like landmines littering their path. Now Sarah was standing, eyes sparkling with unshed tears, ready to step into the light. He held his breath, longing for the truth but dreading its weight. Jake, she began, her voice trembling but steadying with each word, I need you to understand I've kept so much from you. The sincerity in her tone made Jake's stomach clench. He wasn't sure whether to be supportive or terrified. She took a deep breath, her hands clenched at her sides. I've spent so long hiding from my past. I thought if I buried it deep enough, it would just go away. But it hasn't. It's here, it's with me. An image flashed through Jake's mind, a memory of her laughter, carefree and bright, juxtaposed with the shadows that sometimes crossed her face late at night when she thought he was asleep. He hadn't truly seen her, had he? Before us, I was in a relationship that changed me. Her voice cracked slightly, and a hint of regret washed over her expression. It left me believing that dreams could only lead to pain. I never wanted to drag you down with that burden. Jake felt the ground shift beneath him. All those whispers he had heard, were they true? The realization that Sarah had been carrying a weight all these years hit him like a fist to the gut. You don't have to do this alone, he said softly, stepping forward, his own fear fighting against a rising tide of concern. We can face it together. You don't have to carry this by yourself. Jake, that's just it, she continued, eyes glistening. I thought I could keep pretending everything was fine. But you deserve to be with someone who is whole, not someone broken. The room felt charged, each pair of eyes hanging on her words. Jake was lost, terrified of where this might lead. Sarah, I married you because I love you, all of you, the light and the dark. You're not broken to me. Then came the tears finally spilling from her eyes. I was scared to start again, scared to believe again. What if I hold you back? What if you fail? Or worse, what if you turn out just like the others? Her vulnerability was raw and real, a wild contrast to the polished image she presented to the world. And with each heart-wrenching word, Jake felt his resolve strengthen. They had both stumbled through the dark, but together, they could find their way into the sunlight. "Tell me everything," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Please." The room drew back in breathless anticipation, sensing the gravity of the moment. Would this be a tender revelation? Or a crushing truth that might tear them further apart? As Sarah took a shaky breath, Jake felt something shift in the air, a glimmer of hope breaking through the clouds of doubt. But just as he was about to lean closer, ready to absorb her story, a loud crash erupted from the back of the room, jolting them both from the moment. Heads turned, gasps echoed, and hearts raced, because this was not just a story about love, it was becoming one of chaos, too. What had just happened? Was it a sign, an omen, or merely a distraction? Jake felt the desperation in the air as they turned toward the unexpected sound, uncertainty hanging like a storm cloud above them. Would their moment of honesty shatter under the weight of the unknown? Jake's heart pounded in his chest as the tension in the room shifted like the air before a storm. He turned abruptly, eyes searching for the source of the disturbance. The crowd, once focused on Sarah, now seemed to be a sea of wide eyes and slack mouths, all directed toward the back of the hall. There, a table had tipped over, the chairs clattering to the floor, and amidst it all stood Tom, a friend from college. His face was flushed, eyes darting around as if realizing that everyone was watching him, and Jake felt a rush of anger. Why did Tom think this was the time for a stunt? "Tom, what the hell?" Jake called out, trying to keep his voice calm while his insides roiled. "I am sorry," Tom stammered, glancing around as if the sudden chaos could be brushed aside. "I just tripped. I wasn't trying to interrupt." But the damage was done. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, a mixture of concern and curiosity that filled the room with a tension different from the one that had just existed. Jake turned back to Sarah, who had recoiled, her vulnerability momentarily hidden behind a mask of confusion and embarrassment. "Let us just keep going," she said slowly, her voice struggling to regain its earlier steadiness. Jake moved closer to her, his protective instincts flaring. "Are you okay?" Her gaze flicked between the crowd and him. "I don't even know anymore." The shift in her tone marked a retreat, an instinct to pull back into the shadows she had tried so bravely to step out of. "Hey, listen to me," Jake said, lowering his voice. "You've got this. You're stronger than you think." He meant it, and he wanted her to hear it, but Sarah shook her head slightly, tears still glistening in her eyes. "No, Jake. It's not that simple." Before he could respond, the murmurs began again. A group of onlookers laughed nervously, their eyes still trained on Tom, who stood at the back, looking absurdly out of place among the elegant gathering. The spotlight had shifted yet again, pulling the honesty and gravity of their moment away from them. "Seriously?" Jake muttered, frustration bubbling to the surface. He was on the verge of saying something to Tom, to demand respect for this moment, when Sarah spoke again, her voice more resolute now. "Maybe it's time I just say it," she declared, her eyes shifting back to Jake, gathering strength amid the chaos. "Sarah," he started, but she held up a hand. "No, I need to do this. Even if the timing seems wrong." She squared her shoulders as she spoke. "I can't run anymore. I have to face it." Jake could see the shift in her demeanor. The hesitancy began to fade as a new determination lit up her eyes. She stepped away from Jake, no longer just a survivor, but someone ready to confront the past head-on. "Before I met you," she began, voice loud enough to silence the murmurs, "I was hurt. I lost parts of myself in that relationship, parts one thought would never come back. I let it define me. I locked away who I was, convinced that I wasn't worthy of the kind of love I saw in others." Jake's heart sank. Each word she uttered felt like cold water washing over him. But just as he opened his mouth to encourage her, another crash echoed through the hall. This time, it was the sound of a glass breaking. Gasps erupted again, eyes flashing between Sarah and the chaotic scene behind her. "Is it always going to be like this?" Jake wondered, a desperate helplessness creeping in as uncertainty loomed over them both. Can we have just one moment without interruptions? He thought, clenching his fists to keep himself grounded. He didn't want her voice to falter again. He didn't want to lose her courage just as she was finding it. As Sarah stood, a fire igniting in her expression, Jake realized this moment was teetering on a cliff. Would she finally share her truth, or would the chaos swallow them whole? And just then, as Jake prepared himself for whatever lay ahead, he felt that familiar tightness in his chest return. What if they couldn't survive this? What if they never found their way back to each other before he could grapple with the enormity of that question? He was hit with another thought. Was this moment of honesty worth the risk if their past could still shatter everything? What would happen next? Would she finally break down the walls, or would they both retreat into their fears? Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself as the noise faded to a dull hum in the background. She was reclaiming her moment, and that mattered more than any stumble or crash could ever disrupt. She turned back to Jake, who was watching with a mix of concern and fierce admiration. I spent so long hiding, she continued, her voice gaining power. I let that darkness take my joy, my hope. I thought I had to be perfect, polished, and it kept me silent. Her eyes burned, raw and unfiltered. The crowd had shifted again, captivated, pulling them both back into focus. Jake felt a swell of pride watching her. Each word was brave. Each admission was a brick falling away from her wall. But somewhere in that pride, a heavy weight settled back in his chest. What if they don't understand? He wondered. What if she's exposing herself too much? But he couldn't speak it. Instead, he reached out, reassuringly resting his hand on her shoulder. A silent promise that he'd be there, no matter what. With that connection, Sarah pressed on. I have struggled, but I'm ready to stand up. To say that I'm enough, even if it's messy and loud. She glanced over her shoulder at Tom, still standing awkwardly at the back, a spectator in a scene that wasn't about him. And that's why I'm here. A gasp escaped the crowd, each breath still hanging in the air like a fragile glass ornament, waiting for the slightest touch to burst. The murmurs began to fade. They were transfixed, not by the chaos, but by the clarity of Sarah's words. Then, her voice softened. I've spent years trying to bury the parts of me I thought were unlovable. But that's the issue, isn't it? I gave someone else the power to dictate my self-worth, to imprison my spirit. Tears pooled in her eyes, but they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of liberation. Jake's heart raced. She was speaking the truth that lay buried deep within him too. What would it mean for his own struggles? Did love mean embracing those broken parts rather than running from them? Sarah, he whispered, hoping to interject, to add something meaningful, but she pressed on, foolhardy courage fueling her fire. I want everyone here to know you are not defined by someone else's perception of you. You are enough. Your past doesn't dictate your future. She gestured broadly and energy surged through the room. Suddenly, it felt heavy, like the atmosphere was charged, electric. Jake could see people shifting uneasily, some nodding in understanding. He wondered if they were remembering their own struggles, their own moments of truth. Tom fidgeted at the back, still unsure, a part of the fleeting storm swirling around them. Jake had half a mind to call him out, to remind him how vital this moment was, but this wasn't about Tom. It was about Sarah. She didn't deserve to be overshadowed. Not when she was finding her voice. Right now, I'm reclaiming who I am, she said, her resolve resonating like a war cry amid the clatter of broken glass and laughter that taunted them moments before. There will be fear, but I refuse to let it dictate the story of my life. Jake felt a shift inside him. Her courage sparked something in him, the truth of his own battles, the shadow of his own fears loomed darkly behind him. Could he too find strength in vulnerability? It was a question he hadn't dared ask before. As he opened his mouth again, ready to support her journey, he was interrupted once more. A voice rang out from the back. The crowd parted as someone stepped forward. It was someone he never expected to see, someone who could change everything, and suddenly, the room's energy shifted once more. What would this unexpected arrival mean for Sarah's moment? Would it fracture the fragile connection they were building, or could it be the catalyst for something even more transformative? Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The voice that interrupted her was unmistakable. It was Tom, his tone sharp and laced with the kind of tension that twisted in the air. She could see him pushing through the crowd, his face a mix of anger and desperation, and chaos buzzed back to life around them. "Sarah," he called out, and the audience shifted, the energy vibrating with a sudden unease. It felt as though the fragile connection she was weaving with her words might shatter under the weight of his presence. "What are you doing?" Tom's voice rang out, but Sarah did her best to hold her ground. "You're embarrassing yourself. You think this is about you? What are you really trying to prove?" Each word landed like stones in her chest, heavy and unyielding. She had thought this was her moment, a declaration of freedom and strength. And now here he was, trying to rewrite the narrative. "Tom, please," she said, her voice trembling slightly. She wanted to shout, to tell him that this was her time to tell her story. But the more he spoke, the more the crowd turned to him, their attention flickering like candle flames in a breeze. "You've always been so melodramatic," he continued, the mockery dripping from each syllable. "What happened to the perfect image? What happened to enough?" Jake couldn't hold back any longer. He stepped forward, positioning himself next to Sarah. He felt a surge of protectiveness hit him. "This isn't your moment, Tom. You were part of the problem, not the solution. Let her speak. This is about her journey." For a fleeting second, the crowd held their breath, torn between the two fierce souls wanting to protect Sarah, one out of love, the other out of a desperate need for control. Tom's expression changed, confusion battling fury, and Jake kept his gaze steady. A silent challenge that pushed against Tom's venomous grip. In that moment, Sarah found her voice again. "Tom, you're right. I have spent so long trying to fit into that perfect image you wanted. But I am not here to play a role anymore," she declared, the fire returning to her tone. "I'm here to embrace myself, the flaws, the mistakes, and all. My worth isn't contingent upon your approval." With each word, she witnessed a shift in the crowd. Nods of understanding rippled through faces, the air becoming thick with solidarity. Jake felt his heart race for her, incredible pride surging again as Sarah pushed through the noise, reclaiming the narrative. "Let this be a reminder to everyone here," she continued, her confidence swelling. "Our pasts do not have to haunt us. We can be reborn, stronger, and more beautiful than we ever imagined." The audience erupted into applause, the echoes of her truth crashing against each other like waves. Even Tom looked momentarily stunned, his mask of confidence slipping just a bit under the force of her conviction. But Sarah wasn't finished. She turned back to Jake, gratitude flooding her gaze. "And to everyone fighting their own battles, remember this: being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's strength. Don't let your story be written by someone else." As she spoke, something seemed to shift deep inside Jake. The heaviness in him lightened, mere shadows of doubt dissolving into the reverberating strength of her words. Yet, just as the room settled into a new mood, a familiar figure emerged from the walls of the crowd. It was Julie, Sarah's best friend. She was beaming, but with a look of urgency on her face. "Sarah, you need to hear this," Julie urged, pushing past the wave of applause. Sarah paused, confused and a little alarmed. What could Julie possibly say that would add to this moment? This was the turning point, but there was something in Julie's eyes that made Sarah wonder if perhaps there lay an even deeper truth waiting to be unveiled. What was it that could change everything once again? A hush fell over the crowd as Julie made her way to Sarah, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. Sarah's heart raced, echoing a different kind of anxiety. What was so important that it couldn't wait? "Julie, what's going on?" Sarah whispered, gauging the ripples of curiosity moving through the audience. They were no longer focused on Tom, but on the new dynamism that Julie brought. "Listen, I just got a message from someone," Julie said, glancing around to make sure they wouldn't be overheard. "It's about Tom, and it's big." "About Tom?" Sarah felt a deeper chill run down her spine. "What does it have to do with me?" Just Julie hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if the walls had ears. "You'll want to hear this. I think it could change everything for you. Tom's eyes narrowed, suspicious and sharp as he eavesdropped from a distance. The crowd was still, teetering on a balanced beam of anticipation. Jake stepped toward them, concern etched in every feature. Is everything okay? He asked, his eyes darting between the two friends. We're fine, Sarah reassured him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to unfold. Okay, Julie began, her voice barely a whisper. Remember how Tom used to always talk about his business dealings? He was telling everyone he was going to create this huge merger, one that would take him to another level. Everyone thought he was invincible. But what? Sarah pressed, her impatience mingling with curiosity. Word just got to me that it fell through. Julie's words hung in the air, heavy with implications. He's in trouble. His investors are pulling out, and it could ruin him. Sarah's stomach twisted. Part of her felt vindicated, hearing that Tom was finally facing consequences. But another part, the traitorous part, wondered if his fall from grace would drag her down with it. What does this have to do with me? It's not like I want to be dragged back into his mess, she said, her voice barely steady. No, Sarah, Julie insisted, stepping closer, urgency simmering under her voice. This is bigger than him. He's going to come after you. He needs someone to blame, and you'll be his target. For a moment, the world around them faded. Sarah glanced at Tom, who was now pacing, a predatory look forming on his face. This moment of truth had suddenly darkened, a veil pulling across the community gathering they had created. I can't go back, she whispered, fear etching deep lines around her eyes. I want to let him take away what I've just fought so hard for. I know, Julie said, standing firm, her loyalty unwavering. But you have to be ready for whatever he throws at you next. We'll deal with it together. Jake, sensing the shift in atmosphere, stepped in closer to Sarah. You're not alone in this, Sarah. We've got your back, he said, his voice warm and strong. The applause that had once felt empowering now became a distant echo, as Sarah felt the weight of the impending storm looming over her. This wasn't just about her journey anymore. I can't let him dictate my future, she finally said, her voice resolute. I'm not going back into that shadow. Not now, not ever. And just as those words escaped her lips, the crowd shifted. The tension began to escalate, charging the air like static before a thunderstorm. Sarah glanced at Julie's worried eyes, then back to Jake, who nodded encouragingly, but at that moment, a louder voice emerged, cutting through the noise, a voice that belonged to Tom. You think you can keep running from your past? You don't know who you're dealing with. The crowd gasped, anticipation rising like a tide. What would Tom do next? Was he really prepared to unleash his full wrath on Sarah, risking everything he had left? Tom's voice sliced through the tension, a sharp knife in the quiet. Sarah's heart pounded, fear coursing through her veins like adrenaline. She hadn't anticipated being thrust back into Tom's orbit like this, in front of everyone. Tom, this isn't the time, Julie started, but Tom held up a hand to silence her. No, let her speak. He shouted, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. Let us see what she has to say now that the facade is crumbling. The crowd shifted, eyes darting between Sarah and Tom, hungry for a confrontation. This was not the way she had envisioned her moment, standing proud and renewed. But now the spotlight felt like a harsh glare, and she was suddenly that terrified girl again, struggling to breathe under the weight of judgment. Why don't you just leave me alone? Sarah's voice came out stronger than she felt, more defiant. I'm not a part of your world anymore, Tom. He sneered, stepping closer. You think you can just brush me off? You don't get to walk away unscathed. You were part of my rise, now you'll see my fall. Julie moved to put herself between Sarah and Tom, her eyes fierce. This isn't about you, Tom. It's about Sarah moving forward. You don't own her, and you certainly can't dictate her future. Tom rolled his eyes, dismissing Julie's words as if they meant nothing. You think you can protect her? She asked, already feeling the effects of my loss. Just wait until the investors come looking for her. Sarah flinched. This wasn't just talk. He was laying the groundwork for something sinister. He wanted to drag her back into the shadows, to rip open old wounds. I don't want to be caught up in your problems, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. I've built something real, something that matters. Tom laughed, a dark sound that sent chills down her spine. Rebuilt a life? Is that what you call it? Those people out there? He gestured dismissively to the crowd. They'll turn on you the moment the wind shifts. You're never going to be free from me. No, Sarah shook her head, holding her ground. I won't let you decide my worth. A murmur swept through the gathering, a blend of concern and intrigue. Jake stepped forward, protective and resolute. You have to understand, Tom, we won't allow you to intimidate her. She has a support system now that you overlooked. This isn't about you, Jake. Tom's voice hissed, lowering dangerously. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Sarah felt a surge of anger. And you have no idea what I've overcome. You can't threaten me with what I already left behind. Tom's expression changed, a flicker of disbelief followed by a flash of rage. You think you're strong? I'll show you what real strength is. And he pointed a finger at Julie, you're just a distraction. I won't let you manipulate this situation, Julie shot back, standing firm. We're moving forward, Tom. You won't be able to control us anymore. Sarah felt a swell of hope ignite in her chest. Julie, Jake, they weren't just spectators. They were her armor against Tom's relentless attacks. But would their support be enough against the storm he was brewing? As the crowd's anticipation reached a fever pitch, Sarah took a deep breath, knowing she needed to stand her ground. You're the one who has to reckon with your actions, Tom. You can't keep blaming others for your failures. Just then, Tom's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down, the moment breaking his focus. A sudden shadow crossed his face as he read whatever message had come through. Whatever was happening, it was big enough to shift his attention. Things are about to get much more complicated, he muttered under his breath, looking back up with his eyes wild. What does that mean? Sarah pressed, her heart hammering in her chest, his lips curled into a sinister smile. Let's just say, I'm not done playing. As he turned away, the crowd erupted in murmur once more, questions bubbling up in the air like echoes. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, sensing that this fight was far from over. What did Tom mean? What new threat loomed on the horizon? The crowd was alive with whispers, the tension thickening like fog. Sarah's heart raced, confusion mingled with a flicker of fear. She had confronted Tom, but now something darker loomed beyond his words. The way he smiled sent warning bells ringing deep within her, that twisted grin hiding intentions she feared were nefarious. Did you hear that? Jake said, his brow knitted in concern. We need to get you away from him, now. No, wait. Sarah exclaimed, stretching a hand out as if to catch the moment. We can't let him intimidate us. If we back down, it'll only give him more power. But inside, uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. Let's circle together, focus on what's next, Julie said, her voice steady against the chaos erupting around them. The two of them, along with Jake, formed a protective barrier, but Sarah felt exposed, her mind racing with possibilities. Sarah, Tom called, his voice deep and smooth, cutting through the murmur of the crowd. You think you've escaped me, but you'll see I have my connections. One call, and it all goes south for you. At the mention of connections, a chill rippled through her spine. She could almost visualize the intricate web Tom was capable of spinning, a dark net filled with threats and shadows. But she struck back, her voice ringing out as she took a step forward, defiance hardening her features. If you think that you can just control my life with some vague threats, you've got another thing coming. I'm standing my ground. Unleash whatever you've got, because I'm ready to rise again. The crowd shifted, a blend of support and disbelief in their eyes. Some faces were familiar from her past, others strangers united in the moment. They were all witnesses, witnessing her fight for autonomy, and it felt empowering if only for a second. Nice posturing, but this isn't a game, Sarah. Tom's voice turned dark, each word wrapped in venom. I want to go down quietly, and trust me, neither will you. Just then, another buzz cut through the ambient noise. Tom's phone vibrated again, and his eyes darted towards the screen. Something shifted in his demeanor, anxiety creeping through the cracks of bravado. It was a rare moment. This was not the confidence of someone in control. "What is that?" she urged, a part of her emboldened by how quickly the tables seemed to turn. He glared, the smile fading. "Just a piece of business that doesn't concern you." But Sarah recognized fear, fear that made him tremble for just a heartbeat. "Everything concerns me, Tom," she pushed, frustration boiling over. "You might be trying to scare me, but I just cracked your armor." An undercurrent of tension pulsed between them, something palpable, something that suggested the impending clash was only beginning. Each second pulled tighter, as if the very air around them had become an entity of its own. Without warning, the crowd fell silent, anticipation hung in the balance while they waited for Tom's next move. Anxiety filled the space. He was cornered. What would he do? Suddenly, a figure broke through the throng, a woman with eyes ablaze with purpose. She stepped up boldly beside Tom. "Did you forget about me?" Her confidence was undeniable. "Tom, we have bigger problems than Sarah here." The shift in dynamics was instant. Tom's demeanor changed, uncertainty pouring into his eyes as he faced this new player. Who is she? And what did she mean by bigger problems? Sarah swallowed hard, realizing she was standing at a precipice. Allies and enemies were colliding, threats morphing before her eyes. The stakes had skyrocketed. What had she just stumbled into? The crowd held its breath, and she couldn't help but wonder, would this be a new beginning or the unraveling of everything she thought she'd achieved? A breathless silence enveloped the room as Sarah's gaze locked onto the newcomer. The woman stood confidently next to Tom, her fiery demeanor starkly contrasting the nervous hum of the crowd. Uncertainty rippled through Sarah. Who was this woman, and why did she feel like an iceberg drifting into her sea of newfound courage? "Linda," Tom said, his voice low, filled with an urgency that sent an unsettling shudder through Sarah. "What are you doing here?" "Don't play coy," Linda countered, waving a dismissive hand. "The has-beens think they can simply rise again without addressing the consequences? We need to talk." Jake stepped in, his protective instincts flaring as he shifted closer to Sarah. "You think you can just barge in here and intimidate her? This isn't your playground, Tom." "Call it a reunion," Tom retorted, a hint of desperation creeping into his demeanor. The ambitious bravado faded around the edges. "Reunion? Please, that sounds pathetic." "Tom, we're past that," Linda interjected sharply, turning her heated eyes to Tom. "Don't let her affect your judgment now that the stakes are on the table." The room crackled with tension, and whispers of caution flitted among the crowd, with every curious eye turning from Tom's noticeable unease to Sarah's grounded resolve. "Listen," Sarah spoke, her voice steadying, reclaiming her narrative amid the whirlwind. "I'm not going back. I've come too far to let you or anyone dictate my self-worth anymore. My past shaped me, yes, and I truly believe it could strengthen me. But you're neither the key nor the chains that bind me." Tom's lips curled in disdain, but uncertainty lingered in his eyes. "You really think this is over? You have no idea what I can still orchestrate against you." Jake squeezed her shoulder, and Julie stood firm beside them. "You're not in control here, Tom," Jake said, his voice loud enough to command the room. "You think you have power, but strength is here in this moment, in unity and bravery." The crowd began to resonate with approval. The momentum shifted like a tide, carrying Sarah's heart with it. She was not alone. Her people were gathered, friends willing to stand beside her against the storms brewing over her past. "Not a puppet anymore, huh?" Linda observed, her tone shifting from abrasive to intrigued as she focused her attention on Sarah. "Funny, I've seen someone like you break before. But this is new. You're willing to stand up to him, even when he's holding his threats over you." "Yeah, I'm very willing," Sarah affirmed, feeling a fire ignite within her. "I know what you both can do. But I also know the depths of our strength." "And what makes you so sure you won't drown?" Linda pressed. "Because I have seen my light through the darkness. I am worthy of a brighter path." Sarah replied with fervor, her heart racing with each spoken word. Every sentiment found its mark in the crowd. Some nodded, others cried out in support. "Stay out of this, Linda," Tom hissed, anger flitting across his features. But the ripples of awakening had begun, transforming wary gazes to hopeful expressions. The applause that erupted felt like warm rain after a long drought, washing over Sarah as she breathed in the support, the belief fueling her readiness to fight back. The change was palpable, and Sarah noticed the way some of the crowd stepped closer, shoulders squared, voices raised in affirmation. Even amidst Tom's storm, a circle of strength blossomed around them, vibrant and united. "Maybe you're not the one in the power seat, Tom," Linda said, her eyes narrowing at him, amusement growing at the unfolding drama. "That's the difference here." Suddenly, a loud gasp echoed from beneath the crowd, and heads turned as whispers spread like wildfire. You could almost smell the fear and excitement intertwining. "Did you hear that?" A voice rang from somewhere deep. It was someone from the back, energized by adrenaline, growing bold. "He has been laying this out for all of us." Tom's expression soured further. "What are you trying to say?" As murmurs surged, the spotlight shifted to the bystanders, eager to admit their truths. "Sarah's right. We don't want to go backward. We want to stand up like she does." Someone called out, inspiring others to join the chorus. Sarah's heart soared, the crowd ignited with conviction. With their collective energy, they turned to confront Tom. "We're here to support each other." A voice broke through, echoing against the walls like a whistle in the midst of a tempest. Tom's bravado began to wane. The mischievous glint in his eye faded, leaving uncertainty in its wake. The tide had turned. Deep down, sadness flickered through Tom's expression as he realized the alliances forged around Sarah weren't just careless whispers. They were proclamations of strength, and that strength was loyal. "Fine. Revel in your little rebellion," Tom sneered, posture collapsing as he began to retreat. "But mark my words, this isn't over." As he walked away with Linda, the crowd erupted in cheers of camaraderie, each voice heightening the sense of victory they shared. In that moment, Sarah waved her hand, calling for the celebration to hush. "Let this stand as a declaration," she said, her voice rising. "This night marks a new beginning." As applause enveloped her, joy surged into her heart. She finally felt seen, not on the fringes of someone else's story, but in the bright glow of her own resilience. Hand in hand with Jake and Julie, and surrounded by this newfound support, Sarah caught a glimpse of her future, bright and unapologetic. She was no longer living for the approval of others. She was ready to embrace her journey into the light, and as laughter and voices filled the air around her, she faced each day ahead with unwavering hope. This was her moment, their moment. This was their collective triumph, and it would echo through the hallways of their lives together. Now, if you felt inspired by Sarah's journey, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the next exclusive stories that could change your life. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because you know it helps, and we appreciate every one of you. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about the ending. We want to hear your reactions. What does it spark in you? And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Let them join us on this journey of resilience and growth. Your support means everything.